At the heart of a busy corporate lobby in downtown Chicago, a young black intern balanced a tray of steaming coffees, hoping to stay unnoticed. Just a few feet away, a deaf visitor waved his hands in desperation, trying to communicate while the receptionist grew impatient. Most people turned away. She didn't. With quiet courage, she raised her hands and spoke in sign language. What she couldn't see was the CEO stepping out of the elevator, watching every move. Jasmine Carter was 24 years old, a recent graduate trying to make her way through the endless maze of American corporate life. Every morning she rose before sunrise in her small apartment on the south side of Chicago, the sound of the L train rattling past her window like an alarm clock that never slept. She would fix herself a cup of black coffee, slip into her modest suit from the discount rack, and remind herself, just keep going. Her internship at Reynolds Corporation, one of the most respected names in finance, had lasted only 3 months. But in that short time, she had already learned the unwritten rules of survival. Keep your head down. Don't speak unless spoken to. Deliver coffee orders with a smile, even if nobody remembers your name. And above all, never get in the way of the executives rushing between elevators and boardrooms. The Reynolds building itself felt intimidating, with its shining glass walls reflecting the Chicago skyline and its marble-floored lobby that seemed designed to remind everyone of their place. Executives in tailored suits crossed the floor like royalty, their leather shoes clicking with authority, while interns like Jasmine scurried behind them carrying folders and trays. To most of them, she was invisible, just another young hopeful waiting to be replaced when her internship ended. But Jasmine wasn't invisible to herself. Each day, as she stood at the counter of the local coffee shop picking up the morning orders, she reminded herself of why she was here. She thought about her younger brother, Daniel. He was 17, bright, talented, and deaf since birth. Growing up, Jasmine had been his voice, his bridge to the world that didn't always slow down to understand him. She had spent years learning American Sign Language so that he would never feel alone. For Daniel, communication wasn't just words, it was dignity. This was why she worked so hard. The internship didn't pay much, but it was something. She picked up evening shifts at a neighborhood diner, refilling coffee cups for truck drivers and retirees, just to help her mother cover the rent. Their father had passed away when Jasmine was still in high school, and since then, the Carter family had lived paycheck to paycheck. Dreams of stability, an actual career, not just another job, felt distant but not impossible. Inside Reynolds Corporation, however, Jasmine felt the weight of being underestimated. Her supervisor, Victoria Sterling, a sharp-dressed woman in her 40s, treated her like a nuisance more than a colleague. Victoria had a talent for reminding interns of their place, often with a smile that cut sharper than her words. Jasmine, remember, your job here is to observe and support, she had said more than once, her voice sweetened with condescension. Don't try to get ahead of yourself. Jasmine swallowed those words every time, but they burned. She knew she had more to offer than delivering coffee, yet every attempt to show initiative was brushed aside. To the executives, she was just another face in a long line of interns who would come and go. Still, Jasmine carried herself with quiet determination. She kept her head high, even when overlooked. She studied the way the executives spoke in meetings, the way decisions were made. She took notes in her phone during her lunch breaks, hoping that one day she could use those observations to carve her own place in the corporate world. Most days were predictable. Pick up coffee, deliver files, answer phones, and try not to attract unwanted attention. But beneath that routine lived an ember of resilience. Jasmine's world might have been ordinary on the surface, but inside she carried the fire of someone who had spent her whole life being underestimated and refusing to stay that way. That morning began like any other. She rode the crowded train downtown, clutching the cardboard carrier of coffee cups, her mind already racing through her to-do list. The lobby of Reynolds buzzed with its usual rhythm, the security guard nodding politely, the receptionist with her perfect smile, the executives breezing past without a second glance. Jasmine walked carefully across the polished marble floor, her shoes clicking softly, the tray balanced with practiced steadiness. She told herself it was just another day. Deliver the coffee, keep quiet, Stay invisible. But fate doesn't always follow routine. As she crossed the lobby, her eyes caught a small disturbance near the reception desk. A man in his late 40s, dressed in a neat gray suit, was gesturing rapidly with his hands. His expression was tense, his eyes pleading for understanding. The receptionist frowned, shaking her head, clearly growing impatient. Jasmine paused mid-step, her heart tightening. She recognized those gestures immediately. American Sign Language. The man was deaf, and no one was helping him. The executives nearby noticed but chose to ignore it, hurrying past as though the situation were nothing but an inconvenience. The receptionist sighed loudly, her irritation echoing in the quiet lobby. To most people, it was just another small disruption in their perfect morning. But to Jasmine, it was something else entirely. She thought of Daniel. She thought of all the times he had been dismissed, all the times people had spoken over him as if his silence meant he didn't matter. And she felt the same fire rising inside her. She set the tray of coffees on the nearest counter, her pulse quickening. In that instant, she wasn't just an intern trying to survive. She was a sister, an advocate, and someone who refused to watch injustice play out in front of her. Jasmine took a step forward. What she didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that at that very moment, Lawrence Reynolds, the CEO of the entire corporation, had stepped out of the executive elevator. His sharp eyes, seasoned from years of boardroom battles, caught sight of the scene unfolding before him. And just like that, the ordinary morning was about to become unforgettable. Jasmine's footsteps slowed as she approached the reception desk. Her palms felt damp, but her movements were steady. The deaf man looked desperate, his hands moving quickly in a language the receptionist clearly didn't understand, or care to understand. The receptionist crossed her arms. "Sir, I told you, I can't help you if you don't speak clearly," she said, her tone sharp enough to slice through the quiet air of the lobby. Her voice carried a touch of irritation, the kind that comes from privilege, the kind that says, "You're wasting my time." The man's shoulders slumped, his lips pressing into a tight line. For a moment his hands slowed, falling to his sides like heavy weights. Jasmine recognized that look, the familiar shadow of exclusion. It was the same look she had seen on Daniel's face too many times. Her decision was made before she even realized it. She placed the tray of coffees on a nearby counter and stepped forward, raising her hands with the ease of someone who had spent years practicing every sign. "Hello." Her hands moved gracefully. "Can I help you?" The man's eyes widened with relief. His entire expression changed, as if someone had flipped on a light inside him. "Thank you," he signed back quickly. "I thought no one here would understand me." The lobby froze. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. The click of heels slowed against marble floors. Every pair of eyes turned toward the young black intern who dared to step out of line. A few executives whispered to one another. The receptionist stiffened, her face tightening into a scowl. And in that silence, Jasmine and the man carried on their quiet conversation, their hands dancing in a fluent rhythm no one else understood. But Jasmine didn't know who else was watching. From across the lobby, Lawrence Reynolds, the CEO himself, had stepped out of the executive elevator. He was a tall man in his early 60s, with iron gray hair and eyes known for their intensity. Those eyes could dismantle a seasoned executive in a single glance. But now they were locked on Jasmine. Lawrence didn't move right away. He stood silently, observing every detail: the receptionist's irritation, the intern's courage, the deaf man's relief. To him, this wasn't just a small interaction. It was a window into character, and not everyone was pleased with what they saw. Across the room, Victoria Sterling emerged from the corridor that led to the marketing department. She was impeccably dressed, her heels echoing like a countdown across the marble floor. The sight before her, an intern taking center stage, winning silent admiration, sparked a kind of anger only insecure people feel when confronted with genuine competence. Her eyes narrowed. She knew exactly how to turn this into a lesson on knowing one's place. "Well, well," Victoria's sharp voice cut through the stillness. "What a touching little scene." The words echoed off the marble, slicing through the fragile moment like a blade. Jasmine froze, her hands falling for just a second. Her chest tightened. She could feel every pair of eyes shifting back to her, now with a mix of curiosity and judgment. Victoria stepped forward, her smile thin, her tone dripping with sarcasm. Playing interpreter, are we? How adorable. The deaf man looked between them, sensing the tension even without hearing the words. Jasmine quickly turned to him, signing softly, "I'm sorry, sir. Please wait." She turned back to Victoria, steadying her voice. "I was just trying to help." "Help?" Victoria's laugh rang out cold and sharp. "Jasmine, we have protocols here. Interns do not interpret for clients. That's what certified professionals are for. You're here to bring coffee and make copies, not to play hero." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the lobby. Some employees looked uncomfortable. Others smirked, enjoying the show. Jasmine's cheeks burned, but she refused to shrink back. "He needed assistance," she said quietly. Victoria leaned closer. Her words meant to humiliate. 3 months here and already thinking you're indispensable? How ambitious of you." She spat the word ambitious like it was an insult. The receptionist hid a smile behind her hand, clearly pleased to see someone else on the receiving end of Victoria's venom. For a moment, Jasmine felt her confidence slip. But then she remembered Daniel, remembered all the times she had stood by him when others didn't bother. She lifted her chin. "I understand your concern," she said, her voice calm, almost serene. "But it wasn't my intention to break protocol. I just couldn't ignore him." Victoria's smirk widened. "Honey, you're a 3-month intern. Your intentions are irrelevant. Your job is to be invisible until you've earned the right to be noticed." The man signed something urgently, his expression firm. Jasmine turned to him and translated. "He says you don't have to apologize for being kind. He's grateful for the help." That statement sent a ripple through the crowd. A few employees shifted uncomfortably, their faces betraying quiet disapproval of Victoria's cruelty. But Victoria ignored them. She was too busy savoring her power. "Enough drama," she snapped. "Jasmine, you have work to do. Leave professional matters to those qualified to handle them." Jasmine inhaled deeply, her hands trembling slightly at her sides. She could back down, let the humiliation sink in, and retreat to invisibility. That's what Victoria wanted. Instead, she turned back to the man and signed clearly. "Sir, it was an honor to help you. I hope you find exactly what you need here today." The fluidity of her gestures silenced even Victoria for a moment. This wasn't the clumsy effort of someone showing off. It was fluency, grace, authenticity. The man's eyes lit up. He signed back rapidly, his face breaking into a smile. Jasmine translated softly. "He says he rarely meets someone who communicates this naturally, and he has a meeting scheduled with the CEO." The silence that followed was electric. A few jaws dropped. Victoria blinked several times, her confidence wobbling. She had just humiliated an intern who wasn't helping a random visitor, but someone important enough to meet with Lawrence Reynolds himself. Before she could recover, a deep voice cut through the lobby. "I believe," Lawrence said as he approached, his voice calm but filled with authority, "that we've already found the perfect interpreter." Every head turned. Lawrence Reynolds himself now stood beside Jasmine and the visitor, his presence commanding the room. Victoria paled. She had no idea how long he had been watching. "Mr. Reynolds," she stammered, "I was just explaining company protocols. For publicly humiliating an employee who demonstrated competence and kindness?" Lawrence interrupted, his gaze sharp. Victoria froze. Words caught in her throat. Jasmine stood motionless, her heart pounding, but her eyes briefly met Lawrence's. In that moment, she saw something unexpected. Respect. The visitor, now revealed as Mr. Diego Martinez, nodded gratefully. The lobby buzzed with silent astonishment. But what happened next would change not just Jasmine's life, but the future of Reynolds Corporation itself. As the crowd slowly returned to their routines, Jasmine felt her heart pounding, not from fear, but from the weight of everything that had led her to this moment. Her decision to step forward hadn't come out of nowhere. It had been forged over years of small battles, the kind fought far from marble lobbies and glass towers. She had grown up in a modest 2-bedroom apartment on the south side of Chicago. The building was old, the kind with creaking staircases and narrow hallways that always smelled faintly of cooking oil and laundry. detergent. Life there wasn't easy, but it was home. Her mother, Patricia Carter, worked two jobs, one as a cashier at the local grocery store, another as a night shift custodian at the high school. Her father had passed away when Jasmine was a teenager, leaving behind more love than money. After that, Patricia carried the weight of the family on her shoulders, a quiet example of resilience that Jasmine never forgot. And then there was Daniel. Her younger brother was born deaf, a challenge that many outside the family treated as a limitation. But to Jasmine, Daniel was anything but limited. He was bright, artistic, and full of life. She remembered the way his eyes lit up when he discovered drawing, how he would sit at the kitchen table, sketching for hours, his hands flying across the paper as if he was creating a world where sound didn't matter. From the moment she was old enough to understand, Jasmine became his interpreter. At doctor's appointments, in classrooms, even at the grocery store checkout, she stood beside him, translating words into signs and signs into words. Sometimes adults grew impatient with him, raising their voices as though volume could bridge the gap. Jasmine would step in, her hands moving quickly, her voice steady, shielding Daniel from their frustration. Each of those moments left a mark on her. She learned early that kindness was often scarce, and fairness even scarcer. But she also learned that dignity could be defended by those who cared enough to act. That was why she had taken the internship at Reynolds Corporation. It wasn't just about climbing a corporate ladder. It was about proving to herself and to her brother that people like them, from families like theirs, could walk into those glass towers and belong. Still, belonging didn't come easy. In the hallways of Reynolds, Jasmine often felt invisible. When executives brushed past her without a glance, she remembered Daniel being ignored when he signed to a teacher. When her supervisor, Victoria, dismissed her ideas, she remembered the impatient doctor who had spoken over Daniel as though he weren't in the room. Each slight, each humiliation, pressed on old wounds. But those wounds had also built her resilience. She had learned the art of patience from her mother, who never complained despite exhaustion. She had learned courage from her brother, who refused to let silence define him. And she had learned strength from loss, from the hole her father left behind. A reminder that life can take away in an instant, but it can also give back if you keep moving forward. As Jasmine stood in that marble lobby, facing the wrath of her supervisor, those lessons filled her like oxygen. She wasn't just an intern breaking protocol. She was the daughter of a mother who had carried a family, the sister of a boy who fought prejudice every day, and the product of a life that had demanded resilience at every turn. Older employees watching that moment might not have known her history, but they recognized something familiar in her quiet determination. Many of them had fought their own battles, against poverty, against loss, against systems that underestimated them. And in Jasmine, they could see a reflection of those values America often praises, but rarely rewards: resilience, fairness, kindness, and the refusal to stand by when someone is treated unjustly. For Jasmine, kindness wasn't a choice. It was instinct. It was the only way she knew how to push back against a world that too often forgot to care. And so, when she raised her hands to help a stranger that morning, it wasn't just about a deaf man being misunderstood in a corporate lobby. It was about every moment she had watched her brother struggle to be heard. It was about every time she had been told she didn't belong. It was about proving to herself, to her family, and now to a silent audience of executives. That dignity is not a privilege. It's a right. Her heart still beat hard in her chest, but it wasn't fear anymore. It was conviction. And that conviction would carry her into the moments that were about to come. The moments that would test not just her resilience, but the very culture of Reynolds Corporation. Because as powerful as Victoria Sterling believed she was, she had no idea that Jasmine Carter carried with her something far stronger than corporate rules. The strength of a family that had taught her to rise, the memory of a father who had told her never to shrink, and the loyalty of a brother who believed she could face anything. And in the end, those lessons would make her unshakable. The lobby, still humming from the confrontation, seemed to hold its breath. Lawrence Reynolds, the CEO, stood tall, his presence pulling every eye toward him. The marble floors reflected the tension like glass ready to shatter. Mr. Martinez, Lawrence said, turning to the deaf visitor, I believe you found exactly the help you needed. The man, Diego Martinez, nodded with a grateful smile, his hands moving quickly in sign language. Jasmine interpreted, her voice calm, steady. He says he appreciates your kindness. He wasn't sure anyone here would understand him. Lawrence's gaze shifted to Jasmine. It wasn't the cold, distant look of a CEO evaluating another faceless intern. It was something else, something heavier. Respect, curiosity, a recognition of strength he had long been searching for, but rarely found. Victoria Sterling, sensing her grip on the situation slipping, forced a laugh. Mr. Reynolds, with all due respect, this is highly irregular. We have strict policies. Interns aren't qualified to handle situations like this. I was simply trying to enforce... Enforce what? Lawrence's voice cut through the air, calm but sharp. That kindness has no place in this building? That initiative is something to be punished? The crowd stirred. Employees who had been silent now exchanged glances, some nodding almost imperceptibly. Victoria's smile faltered. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? Lawrence pressed, his tone unyielding. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. Jasmine stood motionless, her heart pounding, but her chin lifted slightly higher. Lawrence turned back to her. What's your name? Her throat felt dry, but she answered clearly. Jasmine Carter, sir. Jasmine, he repeated slowly, as though testing the weight of it. You've been here 3 months, yes? Yes, sir. And in those 3 months, have you learned more by watching others do their jobs? Or by stepping in when you saw something that needed to be done? The question stunned her. Carefully, she said, I believe people learn the most when they act, sir, when they do what's right, not just what's expected. A faint smile touched Lawrence's lips, gone almost as quickly as it appeared. He looked at Martinez, then back at her. I couldn't agree more. Victoria's composure cracked. Sir, with all due respect, this is highly inappropriate. Enough, Victoria. Lawrence's voice held finality. The kind of finality that closed deals worth millions. The kind that ended arguments without another word. The receptionist lowered her gaze, pretending to shuffle papers. Employees across the lobby leaned forward, sensing the scales tipping. Diego Martinez signed again, his movements firm, passionate. Jasmine translated, her voice carrying across the lobby. He says he's here to discuss an accessibility partnership, and he wants me present in the meeting. He says I understand not only his words, but his intentions. The revelation hit like a thunderclap. A visitor dismissed as an inconvenience was no ordinary client. He was a man with the power to shape the company's future. Victoria blinked rapidly, her face draining of color. Lawrence's decision came swift, like a gavel striking. Then it's settled. Jasmine, join us for this meeting. The lobby erupted in whispers. An intern, invited into the CEO's private meeting? It was unheard of. Jasmine felt her knees weaken, but she steadied herself. Yes, sir. As Lawrence and Martinez began walking toward the executive elevator, Lawrence paused and turned back. His voice carried, deliberate and clear enough for everyone to hear. Victoria, he said evenly, see me in my office after this meeting. We need to talk about leadership and protocols. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Victoria's face flushed crimson, her mask of authority collapsing under the weight of public reprimand. Jasmine followed the two men toward the elevator. Her reflection shimmered in the mirrored doors, and for the first time since she entered Reynolds Corporation, she didn't see herself as invisible. She saw herself as someone who mattered. As the elevator doors closed, her thoughts flickered to her brother, to her mother, to all the nights she had doubted if this path was worth it. And now here she was, chosen, respected, trusted. But deep down, she knew this wasn't the end of the fight. Victoria Sterling was not the type to accept humiliation quietly. The real battle had only just begun. The executive conference room was sleek and imposing, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Chicago skyline. Sunlight spilled across the polished table where contracts worth millions were negotiated. Diego Martinez sat across from Lawrence, his hands moving with purpose. Jasmine sat beside him, interpreting with flawless clarity. He says accessibility is not just about compliance, Jasmine translated. It's about dignity. It's about making sure no one is left behind. Lawrence nodded, his eyes steady. And Reynolds Corporation is ready to lead in that effort. For a moment, Jasmine forgot she was the intern. She wasn't delivering coffee or standing in the background. She was at the center of the conversation, her voice carrying weight, her presence undeniable. Every sign, every word she translated felt like another brick laid in a foundation she had been building her entire life. But even as hope rose in her chest, she knew a storm was brewing elsewhere in the building. Downstairs, Victoria Sterling was already plotting her next move, and what came next would test Jasmine in ways she had never imagined. The meeting lasted nearly 2 hours, and by the time it ended, Jasmine felt as if her life had turned upside down. Diego Martinez left with a firm handshake and a promise of partnership. Lawrence Reynolds had made it clear that Jasmine would remain a key part of the project. For Jasmine, it felt surreal. Just that morning, she had walked into the Reynolds lobby as an invisible intern, holding a tray of coffee cups. Now she had walked out of the conference room with respect, purpose, and a seat at the table. But not everyone shared her joy. Downstairs, Victoria Sterling sat in her office, her hands trembling over her keyboard. Humiliation in front of the entire lobby, scolded by the CEO, her pride burned hotter than fire. She began drafting emails, plotting ways to discredit Jasmine, determined to reclaim her power. What Victoria didn't understand was that her downfall had already begun, because in that lobby, dozens of eyes had witnessed the truth. They had seen cruelty clash with kindness, arrogance fall to humility, and they would remember it. Jasmine didn't celebrate or boast. Instead, she quietly returned to her desk, her heart full, but her expression calm. She knew this was only the beginning. There would be more battles ahead, more people like Victoria who underestimated her. But she also knew something else now. She had the courage to stand her ground, and the strength of her values to guide her. One act of kindness can cut through walls of prejudice, and sometimes the smallest voice in the room can change everything. And though Jasmine had no idea where the road would lead, she knew she had taken the first step toward becoming more than an intern. She had become a symbol of resilience, fairness, and dignity, values no policy could silence. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring stories that prove kindness and courage can still change the world.